So, just a couple to talk about. First off, in my opinion, the hardest part is that first step, 0.5. You don't really need it all on all of them, but check to see if there's an exponent and check to see if it's even or if it's odd. Before you even start, I would do that. That's going to help a lot of you guys. Because if it's an even exponent, then you're either going to have 2 answers to it or 0 answers, no solution. If it's an odd exponent, you're only going to have 1 solution. But that's, in my opinion, that's the hardest part, and it's because it's just, you get in the habit of just 1 answer every time, and all of a sudden you get one that's an exponent. For that, or you could get 0. Now again, make sure you realize I'm saying an odd or even exponent, not an index number. The number in front doesn't make any difference. We're not looking at that part. We're only focusing on the exponents. Once you have that, the rest of this is the same kind of steps we did. I don't remember when we did these with square roots. But get the radical all by itself. Then cancel the radical and or the exponent. It all depends on if it has, they'll all have a radical in it, just because that's what chapter we're in, the radical chapter. Just happened the other day. I can't grab that. Sorry. They switched everything up on me up here, and I can't find that word. So step 2, cancel the radical and or the radical. Now again, I put 2.5 as this step because, again, you don't need it on all of them. But if you canceled an even exponent, you need to put a plus or minus in there. Like we did with square roots. And we solved when you have an x squared, so we took the square sides. Exponent of 2, we needed a plus or minus. Well, now we're going beyond that. Not only if you cancel a 2, but if you cancel out an even exponent, so a 4, a 6, an 8, so on and so forth. Then step 3, finish solving. So, not terrible, but it is solving. There is some math you have to do with this, so make sure you're paying attention. We don't have any exponents. We're only dealing with radicals. Put this from a different lesson that I had, and so I don't know if I planned this or not. But a lot of people miss this first one because they think they have to add 8 to both sides first. Again, step 1 is get the radical by itself. So a lot of people try to add 8. Well, my question is, you're adding 8. If you are adding, that's because you're doing the opposite. Well, the opposite. What am I subtracting 8 from? You're not, because it's not subtraction. It's a negative 8. We have negative 8 multiplied by the radical. We divide both sides by negative 8. Cancel the square root of 3x minus 2 is equal to negative 2. Negative 8 is positive 2. By itself, to cancel out that radical, we need an exponent. Remember, every time we have a radical, to cancel it, we need an exponent, and vice versa. If we have an exponent, to cancel that out, we need to do a radical. So it's taking both squared. 3x minus 1 is equal to 4. Exponents and our radical canceled. Now we can solve just like normal. So add 2 to both sides. X is equal to 6. And divide both sides by 3. X is equal to 2. Hopefully, if you didn't know how to do that, that's fine. Hopefully you know now, or hopefully you understand now. But that's something we've done. I forget what chapter it was, but we've done that when we're solving where we have square roots in it. The difference with this chapter is now we're going to move on to 5th roots, and the next one's a 4th root or a 3rd root. But don't make it any different than it is, or don't make it any different than the first one. Then we get the radical by itself, so we add 7. So of x is equal to positive 2. You need to raise it to the 5th power. Make sure you do it to both sides. So that cancels. X is equal to 2 raised to the 5th. Either use a calculator or the exponent sheet. That ends up giving you 32. Now, again, we do not need a plus or minus on here at all, because you only need the plus or minus if you're canceling an exponent, if you're canceling an even exponent. So the next one's very similar to the first one we did. Where again, you're not adding 2 to both sides, it's negative 2 multiplied. So to cancel out negative 2 multiplied, we need to divide. So we have the fourth root of x minus 3 is equal to negative 8 divided by negative 2 is positive 4. So again, to cancel out a fourth root, I take both sides to the fourth power. So x minus 3 is equal to 4 raised to the 4 is 256. Add 3 to both sides. You get x is equal to 259. I'm going to stand up here and say those are easy by any means, but they're not as difficult as some people make. Again, they're not easy. A lot of people struggle with these. I get that. Totally understand. But if you go step by step, I mean, again, really the only new thing is canceling that radical. We've actually done that with square roots. The only difference is this is a fourth root, so you need a fourth power. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to go into have a radical and an exponent in the same problem. So just to kind of get a warm up, we're going to do ones with just the exponents, not the radicals. Now again, if there's an exponent, this is where you need to check if it's even or odd. If it's odd, there's only one solution. That's what all these are. So all these are odd exponents. That's how we're starting. That's how I split it up. Third is equal to 8. To cancel out that, we need the third root. We get x equal to the third root is just 2. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. That should make sense. That's the answer for that. X minus 1 raised to the third, so to cancel that out, I need the third root of both sides. Do not need a plus or minus because it's an odd exponent. Since we're canceling out an odd exponent, we don't need to worry about that. Root of 27, either use your exponent list or use your calculator. Is 3. Sides, you end up getting x is equal to 4. It just doesn't work. And the last one, again, not to be broken record, same thing. Divide both sides by 2. I have x to the third is equal to negative 125. Now, here's the thing you need. It's a little bit confusing. So I take the root of both sides. If this was the square root, you cannot take the square root of negative. But if it's a third root or a fifth root or any odd number, you can't get a negative answer. That's totally fine. The third root of negative 125 is negative 5. It makes sense if you take negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5. Negative 5 times negative 5 is positive 25, but then you multiply by another negative 5, which switches it back to negative. This one ends up being negative 5, but I have a lot of students that struggle with that. They have to try to figure out where to put the plus and minus and where not. They have the square root of negative. We'll talk about square roots and fourth roots of negatives in a second. Last but not least, these are all to the third power. The hard thing is, I don't give you a lot of problems to the fifth power because once you get that many exponents, it's kind of, their numbers are pretty big. So obviously you can do this. These rules apply with any odd exponent, whether it's 3, 5, 7, 11, 31, 85, all those odd exponents, these do apply to. Using 3 to keep the numbers a little bit more manageable. So now that we have that practice, now let's go into some of these. Maybe let me know. Let's go to some of these that have both an exponent and a radical. So again, step one is to, I guess my step 0.5 was check to see if it's an even or odd exponent. So it does have an exponent, but it's odd, so it's only going to be way, so we gotta forget about that. By itself. You can cancel. Now, technically, I'll be honest, you can either cancel the exponent first or the radical. I can see where some people would maybe argue that canceling the exponent first makes life easier. Unfortunately, I'm going to not do that. I think it's a lot. I just think it makes more sense logically that since the exponent is inside the radical, to get rid of the radical first. That's what I'm going to highly recommend doing. Square both sides. There are some people that think you end up with two answers with this one because they would have an even number here. That's the index number, not the exponent. We're only looking at the exponent when we're talking about how many solutions we have. I'll take both sides and square them, so we end up with x minus 2 to the third is equal to x squared. So now we got rid of the radical. Now we need to get rid of that exponent. We can't do anything inside of that parentheses until we get rid of that exponent. Well, again, since it's third power, we take the third root. So raise it to the 1/3 power if you want to talk kind of like what we did last week. We have x minus 2 equal to the third root of 64. Again, put it in your calculator if you need to. Or, last but not least, x to both sides. The best parts of these, and I know I've said this before, and I know it's old and it's a broken record, but you can plug that answer back in to double check your work. 6 minus 2 is 4, 4 to the third is 64, the square root of 64 is 8, so you know you got the right answer. Now here's the deal. I know my teachers in high school always said that, where you plug the answers back in to check your work. I don't know if it was different. I don't know what they expected, but I never did that. I never would plug my answer back in. By the time I got done with the test, I was over it. I didn't want to do any extra work. If that's you, I get it. That's fine. That's your prerogative. However, those of you, the ones that have talked to me and you said that you're working so hard and you're still failing, or you really want to make sure you get a B, or you really want to stay on the honor roll, or whatever your reasoning is, if you are struggling and you are trying everything you can to get your grade up, that's a good way to do it. Basically, at a certain point, I know it's not fair, but some people math comes naturally, so they don't have to work hard. Other people have to work really hard. I learned that very quickly in college. However, if you're one that has to work really hard, then you're going to have to just work hard. I get it. It's not fair. I get it. I was that kid in college for sure. But this is a place where you can do that. You can work a little bit harder, plug that 6 in, and double check your work just to make sure you got the right answer. So moving on to the next one, number 5. Again, we're going to get that radical by itself first, so I can divide both sides by 3. So x minus 2 to the third is equal to 8. Now that it's all by itself, now we can cancel out the radical. So to cancel out a 4th root, I'm raising it to the 4th power. So that cancels. So x minus 2 to the third is equal to 8 to the 4th is kind of a big one, I think. That's terrible. 4,096. Exponent of 3, we take the third root, do that to both sides. That ends up giving me 16. And last but not least, just like normal for the rest of it. So add 2 to both sides. We get x is equal to 18.
And the last one for this side, a little bit more work to it, but really, again, it's just more, I'd say, it's not harder work, it's just more time consuming. So to get the radical by itself, the first thing I have to do is get rid of the 7, and then get rid of the 2. You have to do first. You always have to do the adding and subtracting part first. $47 plus 7 is 54. Just want to make sure. Still are not done yet. The radical is not by itself. We still need to divide by 2. So we end up with the 4th root of x plus 3 to the 3rd is equal to 54 divided by 2 is 27, I think. Yeah. So we finally have that radical all by itself. So now we can cancel out that radical. Again, we take it to the 4th power. So this is where you get kind of a big answer, but that's okay, or a big number for this step. 531,441. But I know that's a big number, but you can't be intimidated by big numbers because I'm letting you use your calculators for this. So for here, take the square root of both sides, or the 3rd root of both sides. That's very important. Sorry, just making sure. So you get x plus 3 is equal to the 3rd root of that whole mess is 81. So last but not least, go ahead, subtract your 3. You get x is equal to 81 minus 3 is 79, I believe. 78. Any questions on those? Those should be, again, I'm not going to say they're the easy ones. That's not at all what I'm talking about. But those are the ones that you don't have to remember the plus or minus, and so you don't have to think as hard. You don't have to memorize, you just see it, you do it. If it were me, before I'd take the test, before I'd start the first question, I'd flip to this side and I would circle all the ones that are even, circle all the ones that are odd, or something like that, that have an odd or even exponent. Now you know which ones you need 1 answer and which ones you need 2 or 0. So go ahead and do number 7 and 8 on your own. I'll put up my answers here in a second for you to compare. All right, my answers are up here. Number 7, I got x is equal to 8. I got x is equal to. Any questions on those before we move on? Moving on to the next part. Obviously, you can imagine now we're doing even exponents. All we've done is we've dealt with the ones that are odd exponents. The even exponents are the ones you either going to get no solutions or 2 solutions. So, take the square root of both sides. X is equal to 9. Remember, could be positive or negative 9. Or sorry, 3. Positive 3 squared is 9. Negative 3 squared is 9. Negative 3 times negative 3. Part B, same thing. Again, don't make this harder than it is. I'm not saying it's easy, but we've done this before. And part C gets a little bit more interesting. We divide by 2, so we have x squared is equal to negative 25. But here, when you try to take the square root of both sides, you cannot take the square root of a negative. So there's 2 different ways you could answer this. If you want to, and I'm going to not recommend this, but if you want to say your answer is plus or minus 5i, because we talked about that if you have in your radical, you can put the I in there. If you want to do that, that's fine. The reason I would not is because that only works for square roots. For 4th roots, there isn't that at all. There isn't that shortcut. Because we already talked about how I is the square foot of negative 1. Well, that doesn't do anything. That doesn't say anything about a fourth root or a sixth root or any of that. So for me personally, I would always just put no solution. So again, you're either going to get 2 solutions or no solutions from me. So moving on, so now these are all fourth powers. Well, again, to cancel out a 4 exponent, take the fourth root. Power. Take the fourth root of both of them. Remember, if you want to, we can always make radicals into exponents by using a fraction. That's what I talked to my calculator last. For 625, to the fifth root, to the fourth. 5. I put in my calculator 625 raised to the 1/4. That's the punchline. The next one, subtract. But this is a problem where you cannot do this one. This one's no solution now. And what are 4 numbers when you multiply them together, they give you 81. Because remember, if it's a negative number, negative times negative is positive. And then you multiply by a third one, which would make it negative again, but a fourth one would make it back into positive. If that doesn't make any sense, just trust me. Since it's an exponent, you need to make sure you remember that. Part F, again, it looks like you can, but even this one, you can divide by -3 first. -48 divided by -3 is 16. So I take the fourth root of both sides. The fourth root of 16. Oh, did I mess that up over here? I did. So the fourth root of 16 is, put it in, just make sure I'm right. Fourth root of 16 is 2, but I messed this up on D. Remember, it's not just 2, it's plus and minus 2. That's, again, all these you should get 2 answers or no answers. So this one over here, I'm going too quickly to think about. It should be positive and -5. Because you either get 0 answers if it's like this one, or 2 answers if it's like the other. Apologies, that is. With that, we're dealing with the exponents. Now let's go on to where we have these radicals. So just like before, to cancel out a third root, I raise it to the third power. It does not make any difference. You do not have to worry about, again, we're only worried when we cancel the exponent, about the plus signs. So x plus 2, 2 raised to the third. Then to cancel out that squared, we need to take the square root, which is 27, the square root of both sides. But again, plus or minus 27. Now this is the part where you really have to pay attention to. And this is no different than what we did before. That you're not done with that. You cannot just subtract 2 and say, so the answer is plus or minus 25. So that gives you 2 separate answers. The 27, we have a positive and a negative. So you need to separate it and solve that. X plus 2 is 7. X plus 2 is equal to. So we subtract 2. X is equal to. X is equal to 27. Oh, sorry. Negative 27 minus 2 is negative 29. Those are your answers. I have to take the square root of both sides. When you cancel out an exponent, you need to make sure you have the plus and minus option. Number 10, same thing. Radical by itself, so divide by 3. So at the third root of x plus 1. Now we need to raise both sides to the third power. That gets rid of that radical, so that's 64. And sides, so take the square root, that cancels. We have x plus 1 is equal to. Then subtract 1, which again is x is equal to positive 8 minus 1. So x is equal to 7. But also x is equal to x is equal to negative 8. So now when we subtract 1, we're subtracting negative 8. So negative 1 is x is equal to negative 9.
For 7 and 9. Again, any of them have an even.
You're going to have two answers. We don't care about the index number. We don't care if that's even or odd. We're only focused on the exponent. All right, go ahead and do those next ones on your own. When you're done, you can go ahead and start your practice test. I'll put the answers up here in a second. So the answers are up there. Sorry, apparently I never paused that video for people watching, I guess. Again,
Number 11, you end up getting negative. A lot of people are going to miss this one. And if you solve this one, I will give you partial credit for sure. But since you get a negative, you cannot take the square root of negative. I guess probably I should have taken one more step on that one.
it doesn't make much difference if you notice it, but maybe I should have said, since it's the third power, take it to the, since it's the third root, take it to the power, take the third is negative 64. And that's where we end up. The next step, we have to take the square root, but we can't take the square root of the negative. This, but we can't take the negative, so this one's no solution. Now again, if you put plus or minus 8i, I can live with that, but if I were you, I would stick with no solution for this chapter. If you have any questions, let me know.